Oh wait, I need my reading glasses. Even though I know her by heart. Uh-oh, when they draw the curtains, that's it.
I'll leave it open a little bit. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, sure.
Blackout.
Good evening and welcome to Greenkill Sessions presents Calling All Poets. I think this is like episode 20 or 19 or 18 or whatever the case might be. We are here this evening in beautiful Greenkill Gallery in Kingston, New York. Special thank you to David Shell, for this wonderful space. Again, as I've said many times, if you're a musician, if you're an artist, if you're a poet, if you're a writer of any kind, this is the place to put the show on because Dave has made it that kind of place. And I want to thank everyone for joining in. Calling All Poets is in its 22nd year. We've been doing this every second Thursday now for about a year and a half. And our two featured poets tonight will be Jim Eve, the man who founded this whole idea, and Kate Hymes. Addison Goodson, who was our third feature, is a little under the weather. I won't tell you the poetic way that he told me he's under the weather, but he will not be joining us tonight. Hopefully he's watching. And what can I tell you about CAPS? We had a relatively successful first Friday back in live land at the Poughkeepsie Underwear Factory last Friday. The physical end of things worked. The Zoom end kind of crashed and burned, but we will figure that part out. And we will be back on Zoom and at the Underwear Factory on North Cherry Street in Poughkeepsie next Thursday, which Siobhan Parda will be coming in from Ireland, will be our featured poet. So, as I mentioned, Jim Eve and Kate Hymes will be our features for this evening. We were going to go in alphabetical order, but true to form, Jim's not here yet. So we're going to reverse the alphabet. And it's always a pleasure for me to introduce Kate Hymes. She's a poet and writing workshop leader. Her poems have appeared in a number of anthologies, most recently Mightier Poets for Social Justice. Hey, that was published by Calling All Poets in 2020. She is committed to making it possible for anyone with the desire to write words to make art of their stories, and she's done a great job of it. Kate lives, writes, and leads the Wallkill Valley Writers Workshop. She's been a great friend of CAPS for a gazillion years. Kate Hymes.
Hi, everyone. I just want to second what Mike had been saying about Greenkill. This is absolutely a wonderful, wonderful space. And I'm so glad Mike invited me to come and share a few of my pieces with you this evening. I'm going to do something a little different than I normally do in that the first piece I'm going to read is a prose piece, is fiction. Among other things that I do besides my own writing and helping others discover their voices in the written word, I also work with the League of Women Voters Mid-Hudson region. And this isn't a big election year like next year will be, but this is, in New York State, an election year. And I'd like to encourage anyone who has not yet registered to vote to go out and register to vote. And remember that we do have local elections in November. The prose piece I am going to read, the fiction piece, which I am going to read this evening, is a piece about a post-World War II couple registering to vote. Isaiah and Lucy walked into the Union Hall of the International Longshoremen's Association Local 1419. Lucy's hair was freshly pressed and curled, and she had purchased a new dress. Isaiah had changed from the clothes he wore for work at the box factory into tan pants and a sports coat. They looked like a post-war couple fit for the cover of Ebony magazine, young and moving up in the world. Isaiah and Lucy found seats about midway the long, narrow room. They had arrived early. Lucy had insisted. It makes a good first impression. She wanted to see the hall and watch folks arrive as it filled up. The hall was less impressive than she had imagined. It fit only one block of 10 rows of wooden folding chairs, 6 chairs in each row. The chairs were aligned a bit off-center in the room, so as to make space for a line of tables alongside the opposite wall from the seating. The result was an aisle between the tables and chairs, but none between the chairs and the other wall. A tired man could easily lean against the wall and take a nap if the meeting ran too long. Isaiah and Lucy chose aisle seats so they could see the proceedings clearly without obstructions. As others arrived, they didn't mind having to rise and sit again, then repeat 2 times more as their row of chairs filled up. Lucy observed that she wasn't the only woman in the room. She wasn't the only one who had insisted to her husband or boyfriend that she was coming along to the meeting. And she guessed from the appearance of some of the women, several mamas had insisted they would accompany their sons. There were more men present by half. Only men sat at the tables along the wall and at the head table. Those men appeared to be the union officials. As they moved back and forth from the side tables to the head table, placed next to a preacher's stand, or a podium, as Lucy had learned to call it in high school. She guessed someone must have borrowed one from a church for the meeting. The filled room felt close, as rooms tended to do in this city where moss grew on bricks and stones most months of the year. Lucy, along with several of the women, pulled fans from their purses, swept them across their faces to move the damp air and keep sweat from running down their temples. This was a special occasion, and the last thing any one of the women wanted was to look as though they were on duty at their day jobs, cooking, cleaning someone's house other than their own. They wanted to look like proper housewives, like the women in Good Housekeeping, like the women they worked for. A man walked the single aisle, handing out fans of the Getty's funeral home to any man who wanted one. Even though the room was tight, almost to a man, they said, "No, thank you, I'm good." With the tap of a gavel atop the podium, the formalities began. First, there was a prayer, followed by a communal singing of Lift Every Voice and Sing. Then came the speakers. One after another, they congratulated these men who had been accepted as members of ILA Local 1419. Every man and woman present knew that becoming a longshoreman got it. Just a second here. That becoming a longshoreman was the highest paying job in the city for men who didn't have a high school degree. Since the war's end, work on the docks had quadrupled. "Every day you are hired and fired," one of the men said. "Once a ship is fully loaded or unloaded, your work is done. That's where the union comes in. We make sure you get your next job. There's always another ship to be unloaded. Our men work regular. A speaker explained the benefits of being a union man: fair pay, injury and death benefits. He explained the work gangs and paydayers, then warned the men about the women who hung around the wharves on Friday nights when their pockets were full of money. There followed a rustle in the room as women leaned into men's ears. You better bring every dime of your pay home. This means I can stop taking care of someone else's house and take care of my own. Then the final speaker stood at the podium. Men, if we are strong and stand together, it won't be like it was after the last war. We'll be prepared if they come after us this time. No more red summers. Some of you weren't born then. Some of you were just babies. But you've heard the stories. No more fighting overseas for freedom and not having any here at home. I can't make you do it, but if you want regular work on the docks, I strongly suggest you register to vote. Lucy felt Isaiah straighten up and sit tall beside her. Sure feels good to be part of something that means something, where we stand up for what's ours. Lucy took his hand into hers and squeezed. Isaiah, like most of the new men in the hall, had served in the war. He had landed on Normandy Beach nearly a month after the landing called D-Day. Before D-Day, he and the men in his unit, as they waited in England for the big day, caught invasion build-up fever. Thought that maybe this time, with the big push against Germany, the army would need all his men to fight. But they were passed over again. When Isaiah's company landed, the battle on the beaches was done. They arrived soon enough after to see the wreckage and the carnage, though. The worst was the smell. Burnt and smoldering metal, flesh, gunpowder, gasoline, the gagging stench of industrialized death. There was vomit, great pools of it at the shoreline. As one man after another stepped ashore, his boots sank into it, and he bent over, unable to hold back his body's rush of fear and revulsion. After an hour on the Normandy beach, Isaiah no longer felt passed over. He felt lucky. After another month, his company of support troops were reorganized and named by General Patton himself, the Red Ball Express. Their job to deliver the goods, food rations, ammunition, guns, mortars, medicine, spare parts, communications, anything and everything they could fit or force onto a truck bed. They delivered whatever Patton's army needed to take the fight to the Germans and push them out of France. Isaiah learned to load and unload ships fast, to load and unload trucks even faster. When he applied to work on the docks, his service experience and a good word from Gilbert, a friend of Lucy's family, who was a union man, made the difference. Without the Red Ball Express, he might not be one of the lucky men sitting in the Union Hall. When the final speaker finished his remarks, the new men were directed to the series of side tables along the wall. At each table sat two men, and above their heads signs handwritten in large block print for each of the city's wards. Ex-GIs, most of them, the men lined up out of habit rather than crowd around the tables. Women drifted to the center of the room. In small groups, they exchanged dreams about how their lives were going to change now that their men were longshoremen and belonged to the Union. Lucy joined Isaiah in the line. There were 3 or 4 other women who stood beside their men in line as well. When they reached the head of the line, they gave their address, and they were directed to the table for their ward. Gilbert was one of the men seated at the table. Isaiah and Gilbert shook hands. Gilbert rose from his chair and leaned forward across the table to meet Lucy halfway as she bent over and offered her cheek. He pressed a light kiss in greeting. "Man, I got to thank you again for putting in a good word for me," Isaiah said. "It was nothing. I promised Miss Kate before she passed I'd look out for her girls. I'm just keeping a promise. Besides, I know you a good man. This woman wouldn't have married you if you weren't." Isaiah looked at the woman beside him. They had known one another for years, many years before the war broke out. For a long time, he thought Lucy wasn't the marrying kind. She was the last of her sisters to marry. Even her baby sister had married before she did. Her head was too full of plans about making her own way in the world. Instead of hymns or the spirituals upright women sang in times of trouble, Lucy, who loved Billie Holiday, found comfort and solace in singing, "God bless the child that got her own." She scared lots of men, and sometimes she scared him. He loved that she wasn't an easy woman to love. Gilbert said, "Now let's talk about getting you registered to vote." Lucy said, "What do we need to do?" Gilbert had a list of questions for them. "Can you read and write?" Yes, they both could. Lucy could read and write better than Isaiah, but he was better at figuring numbers in his head. Both Gilbert and Isaiah paused when Lucy said, "Of course I can read and write. I graduated high school." For a moment, they stared at her. With a deep rumble from his throat, Gilbert went ahead and wrote down what she said. Neither man said a word. "Anyone in your family vote?" Maybe our grandparents did, but by the time our mamas and papas were old enough to vote, folks in St. James Parish didn't vote. Sometimes you might hear old folks talking about voting, but it was in whispers when they thought we children were asleep. Lucy remembered Tylan's son, who had to leave St. James when he became involved with people promoting unions and voting. Even my Uncle Dave in Chicago doesn't vote. He keeps trying, though. "You own property?" "Not yet, but we got plans to have a house of our own. You know they building houses for veterans on the other side of the river in Algiers. Isaiah's job will help us save up the money." "What about a car? You want a car?" "We plan to buy one real soon. That's the first thing we plan to do now that Isaiah has a good job." Gilbert said, "We can help with that too. Make sure you don't get cheated. When you got the money together, let us know. We like our members to have cars." Gilbert pushed the paper where he had been making notes across the table. "Okay, Isaiah, you sign here." He hesitated, passing the paper to Lucy. He sat up, his eyes focused on them as if they were the only folks in the room. "Lucy, you sure you want to register? Most women let their men register first, then wait to see how it goes before they take that step." Lucy pulled the paper from beneath Gilbert's fingers and signed her name below Isaiah. "There now, I want to vote." "Isaiah, in a week or two, you'll get a note in your pay envelope telling you what happens next. We like our men. Gilbert's gaze moved to Lucy, and any family who wants to vote to go in a group to register. We go in groups by wards, makes it easier and quicker. The register is likely to give you less hassle if you go in one of our union groups. We work in gangs, we vote in gangs. That way, poll watchers are reluctant to challenge your right to vote. There's lots of people think they can scare us, but not this time. We know what it takes to fight for freedom. Isn't that right, Isaiah? Isaiah hadn't had much occasion to fire a rifle in the Army or fight in the way he suspected Gilbert meant. He had fought fear. Red Bull Express trucks had to keep moving, keep pushing forward despite German flyers scraping convoy trucks from overhead and German snipers shooting at them from the side of the road. A truck blown up ahead of yours? One burned out with bodies still inside, pulled to the side of the road? Keep moving forward. The Third Army counted on the supply trucks to get through. So you prayed a lot, cursed a lot, kept your head down, dodged and zigzagged when needed, and kept pushing forward. Fighting meant keep moving forward no matter how scared you are. If he got it done for the Army, he could get it done for his folks and his family. Isaiah said, "Yeah, partner, that right. After France, these people can't scare me off." Lucy took her husband's hand once more and squeezed. She knew in that moment she was a lucky woman. So on my way coming out here this evening, I heard that the groups that organize the march, the attack on the Capitol on January 6th are planning a march for September 19th. And given that, I thought I would go back to a poem that I wrote that was inspired by January 6th, 2021. The poem is "What Rough Beast," and it's after W.B. Yeats' The Second Coming. And there's an epigraph of this. Stone Mountain Monument is the largest high-relief sculpture in the world. The Confederate memorial carving depicts 3 Confederate figures of the Civil War: President Jefferson Davis and Generals Robert E. Lee and Thomas J. Stonewall Jackson. The entire carved surface measures 3 acres, larger than a football field and Mount Rushmore. And that's from Stone Mountain Park. 3 horsemen ride stone steeds down from the mountaintop, awakened by the brass clang of lesser monuments tumbling down from empty pedestals. The battle cry rises again. Raise the bonny blue flags, boys. Mount the barricades. Let the horns blow, the chauffeur sound of a Jericho march. Carry our flag into their citadel. Rampage through their hallowed halls. Our cause is not lost. He said, "I'll be with you." He lies. Remember us, boys. Yell our names. We will answer from Stone Mountain, Georgia, and all the dark and secret confines they have imprisoned us, as if out of sight is out of mind, out of your hearts. We are with you, boys, you, the true believers, followers of the burning cross, the faithful who require no evidence. Don't be fooled by apologists who protest, "This is not us." Stand up, proud boys. This is us. You are the soul of America. You redeemed our nation from darkness once. Our nation will be born again. The Bible tells us so. Refined, purified, and made white. In the name of all we hold dear, the second coming is here. Should I read something else? Wave when you want me to quit. Okay, two more. Okay. Let's see. Since I'm doing these pieces, I'm going to read a poem, which is a found poem, and it makes use of the state mottos of the states that were the states of the former Confederacy. And I'll start this first by reading the mottos for each state, and then I'll read the poem. So the state mottos are: North Carolina, to be rather than to seem. Texas, friendship. Virginia, thus always to tyrants. Alabama, we dare defend our rights. Arkansas, the people rule. Georgia, wisdom, justice, and moderation. South Carolina, while I breathe, I hope, ready in soul and resource. Florida, in God we trust. Tennessee, agriculture and commerce. Louisiana, union, justice, confidence. Mississippi, by valor and arms. A found poem of the former Confederate States. We pledge to be rather than to seem like-minded Confederates who in friendship swear, thus always to tyrants, big government and Washington overreach. We dare defend our rights, state rights to our peculiar institutions, our lost cause and battle flags, our monument avenues. We declare the birth of a nation where the people rule, not dark-skinned foreigners in a foreign land they call home. With wisdom, justice, and moderation, with all deliberate speed, as molasses flowed on Proclamation Day. While we breathe, we hope, ready in soul and resource, to fend off audacity and uppityness, damn mighty streams of righteousness. In God we trust. O vengeful God, we are your people, dedicated to agriculture and commerce, the harvest of cheap labor. Union, justice, confidence, forever just us, by valor and arms. And let me see. Wait a minute, let's see. Do I happen to have? Okay, I guess I'll, just a second. Okay, I think I'll go with this one so I stay kind of in the same frame. I have a couple of poems that are actually based on Supreme Court decisions, and since the Supreme Court has been in the news, I have spent many of my adult years when the Supreme Court was by and large considered a liberal institution, but it hasn't always been that way. There was the Dred Scott decision in 1857 in which the Supreme Court ruled no rights which a white man is bound to respect. No, you can't. Don't do that. No, you won't. You can't go there. You can't be here. Don't sit there. Don't drink here. You can't eat here. Don't look at her. Don't whistle. Don't look him in the eye. You can't work here. Do not apply. You can't buy a house here. You won't be my neighbor. Don't be seen here after sundown. You don't belong. Don't question. Don't speak up or talk back. Don't kneel. Don't move unless you are told to do so. Don't reach for anything. Don't expect anything. Don't say your life matters. So, thank you again to Caps and to Greenkill. Much appreciated.
Kate Hymes, everyone. And I have to say, I just realized what a daunting responsibility that is. I'm just sitting there enjoying the reading, and whether it's Kate or it's whoever it might be, and they say, "Oh, just wave and tell me to quit." I don't want anybody to quit. I don't want anybody to quit. I want you to keep on going. That's a massive responsibility. I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, thank you, Kate. Thank you very much, as always. There's a running joke over the last 20 or so years that I'm the face of Calling All Poets and Jim is the founder of Calling All Poets. So, Mr. Jim Eve is the founder of Calling All Poets, which is in its 22nd year. Caps was based at the Roos Gallery and Studio in New Paltz, New York, but now thrives in the virtual world thanks to Zoom and also here and at the Poughkeepsie Underwear Factory every first Friday and third Thursday. He has been a facilitator of poetry events for over 30 years. He tinkers with words, writing scattered thoughts some call poetry. My buddy, my brother, Mr. Jim Eve.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be reading a few things that I've written some years ago and just never pulled out until recently because I'm looking at stuff to work on and rewrite or whatever it might be. And I'm glad I have the opportunity to at least read these things, a couple of them at least, for the first time here at Greenkill, and something that Mike Jurkovic hasn't heard over the years. So the first one is not poetry. I'm really not sure what it is, but I'll call it a short story, and it's titled The Errand. A grueling hot day, humidity thick, and breathing was like sucking air through a plastic bag. I laid low. The house was a steamer, and the ceiling fans struggled to stir the heat while the kids stewed in the pool. The water warm by the summer sun was not refreshing, but wet, and that would do. My wife did a lazy impression of a lobster that had been pulled from a pot, bubbly with sweat and very red as she sunbathed on the deck. She called to me, "Honey." Honey is a catchword for husband. "I've got something for you to do." "Yeah?" I grunted. "Can you go to the ShopRite and get a few things?" Wives have the knack for asking husbands yes questions. So I did the right thing. I said, yes. I turned off the TV, placed the remote on the coffee table, and lifted myself off the couch to get the list, which appears sometime shortly after we were married. I think it's a conspiracy concocted by the mothers of sons and their prospective daughters-in-laws. Men have to have a shopping list, or all hell will break loose. Yeah, right. Anyway, I got my list and took off. Not before inspecting it, of course. It contained bread, wheat, not white, 2-liter Pepsi, $1.29 on sale, a gallon of milk, 2%, head of lettuce, iceberg, of course, corn, peas, and mixed vegetables, frozen, not canned, and other assorted items. MIA, a 6-pack of beer and peanuts. No problem. I'll just add them to the list. The trip to the supermarket in this scorching heat was unbearable, but the automatic doors swung open and a blast of frigid air beckoned me. Lured in with the shopping list in hand, I grabbed a grocery cart and noticed the place was SRO. Women of all shapes and sizes, colors, and dress immediately engulfed me. This was not going to be a simple errand. Point of fact was, I've placed myself in the mainstream of what looked like the female version of Demolition Derby, supermarket style. Hey, no problem. First up on the list, bread. As I looked up the aisle for signs for bread and pastry, a young lady with a fully loaded cart crashed into mine. I said, "I'm sorry." "Why?" "I don't know. I guess maybe I thought she had the right of way, for I was trying to cross the aisle by the checkout, and she was barrel-assing down one of the aisles to get to the register. Anyway, she just gave me the evil eye and went on her way, where she promptly crashed into another lady's cart and commenced to argue over who got to the register first. Oh yes, the bread. Got it. Pepsi next. As I tried to navigate down the aisle, down the pasta and sauce section, there were women with children in carts, or leading them by the hand and threatening others who dallied behind. Carts were everywhere, which made maneuvering past them like running an obstacle course. One lady saw me coming. She blocked traffic in both directions. "Excuse me," I said, and ducked as the scathing look she shot me whizzed by my head. She grabbed her grocery-laden cart by the handle, lifted it up, slammed it down to the side of the aisle. Okay, I was impressed. So I started to move on by her when this big old heavy-set woman barged through my passage, sideswiping those carts aligned along the aisle. A choir of cackling curses filled the air. I thought, this is mayhem. The Pepsi on sale was stacked at the end of the aisle. Got it. As I slowly moved through the supermarket gridlock, one of my wife's friends spotted me. "Hey, how you doing? Where's your better half?" she asked. "She must be daring if she's letting you shop. Boy, your kids are getting big. Did you put on weight? Tell her I said hello. See ya." I guess she never picked up on my blank stare and weak hello. "Lady, who the hell are you?" No matter, she was gone. And as far as telling my wife she said hello, forget about it. My wife will be telling me in a day or so that so-and-so saw me at ShopRite, and I'll go, "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you." No big deal, I'm a husband. I'm not supposed to remember to give the wife messages. As I rounded the corner on the snack aisle, I saw a sister wailing on her little child. "You best come on, boy," she yelled. I said, "No." Smack! "Wah!" the boy cried. I changed my mind and decided not to go down the aisle. Instead, I backed up, turned around, when thud, a cart hit me in the small of my back. I looked around, and there stood a senior citizen wearing a lopsided blonde wig. "Sonny, you're blocking the aisle." Damn, I was getting pissed. Once again, I said, "I'm sorry," and moved my cart, only to have some pint-sized preschooler run into it. "Shit, shit, shit." He fell to the floor and screamed. His mother was on me like a bad wind. "Why don't you watch where you're going?" she yelled. "Lady, you shouldn't be letting your kid run around unattended." "Wrong. You stupid ass. Don't tell me what to do with my child. Who in the hell do you think you are?" she shouted. Grasping the cart handle tighter, I moved away as her curses pounded the back of my ears. I continued on my way, got the milk and other assorted items, and headed for the checkout. The lines were backed up and helter-skelter. The express line was the shortest, so I headed there. A sign above the register read, 12 items or less. Quickly counting the groceries in my cart, I had the correct amount and made my move when a sister with a cornrow hairdo cut me off and jumped ahead. She was oblivious to the sign above the register, and her cart was damn near full. Fuming, I wondered if the checkout girl would say something. Nope, not a word. I wondered where the hell the manager was. Nowhere to be found. As the sister started unloading her groceries, I noticed she had fine-colored skin, rich ruby lips, and sparkling green eyes. She was a fox, dressed in a yellow halter top, filled to capacity, in white tight shorts. Oh, hell, I thought, as my fuming started to subside. I could be stuck behind an old hag, so I stood, silently admiring the view. As the express line started to back up, I noticed others getting impatient. Halfway through the sister's order, my reverie was broken. The checkout girl stepped away from the counter and headed into the crowd of shoppers to do a price check. Sister, 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 how could you be so stupid? Damn, what a way to have your bubble busted. I just can't win. Where the hell did the checkout girl go to get that price? People started moving to other lines, but I chose to wait, even though the other lines moved more quickly now. Indecision sat in. Move to another line or stay put? I thought, stay put, asshole. So I did. The checkout girl came back, and the sister finally checked out. Thank goodness. My turn. I was grateful that I would at last get out of this supermarket traffic jam. I packed my own bags, loaded my cart, and left. Returning home, I gave my wife the groceries. As she unpacked them, she immediately noticed the beer and peanuts. These weren't on the list. Where's the lettuce? How could you forget the lettuce? Didn't you follow the list I gave you? Another yes question. Yes, dear, I replied, and grabbed my beer and peanuts. I should have known better than to send you shopping. Yes, dear, you should have. God, isn't it wonderful that there are some things we truly can agree on? Making my way to my beloved remote and comfy couch with beer and peanuts in hand, I thought, my excursion to the supermarket wasn't that bad. A little trying, perhaps, but nothing I couldn't handle. Then a second thought popped into my head. It could have been a lot worse. My wife could have gone with me. Again, and that's probably the longest piece of anything I've written at any time as the founder of Calling All Poets, because everybody that knows me know I don't write very long. And so I tried to tonight bring some old pieces and some longer pieces of poetry and whatever that might pop up to read. This piece, again, an old piece from '98, is called Emotional Frankenstein. I cannot pinpoint the origin of my emotional dismemberment. The perpetrators are known, though. At the time they decided their narrow course of action, they did not know what tumultuous repercussions would be or the duration of the agony that would accompany it. They quite possibly believed they were doing the right thing, quite possibly thought it was for the best, quite possibly regretted it, and walked most of their lives in an emotional bubble of remorse. Then again, maybe not, for the truth of the matter is, nothing was ever revealed to me, so I have walked through most of my life an emotional Frankenstein, a sewn-together emotional freak, with raggedly stitched feelings attached to a grotesquely scarred heart. I am alive, though, for I hear myself breathing. I'm not a rhyming poet, but this is a rhyming poem, and it's called Gather Round You Poets Free, and it's from '97. Gather round, you poets free, with a cup of Joe or herbal tea. Let us write and read of things that be in the hills and valleys or concrete cities. Let us politic the night away or discuss the things that religions sway. Let us write of death, sorrow, and remorse. Let us write of love and, of course, of all the things that shuttle through our minds through the annals of time. And always tapping on the matters of heart that draw us near or push us apart, let us write of man, woman, and child. Let us write of things no longer wild, but let us write. We must, you see, for the facts of life are poetry. From '96, Untitled. I was told I was running away from myself. On the contrary, I disagree. I believe I am running after myself, but myself is running parallel to me. Go figure. From '95, an ironic thing. All I desired of life was a small peace for myself, where I could find peace of mind, peace of heart, and a love I could call my own. 21 years later, I have a small piece of life, no peace of mind or heart, and a love I'm not sure of. The ironic part about all of this is that there are people who have less or have not yet experienced this of which I speak. And one from '83 called Voidville. Staring at the black page through a cloud of smoke, I hesitate as I try to corral scattered thoughts. The typewriter hums impatiently as the white keys, cool and shiny, wait to be bashed into a writer's oblivion. My cigarette tastes stale as a limp ash drops on my thigh. I brush at it, but it's already on the stained floor. Shit, I accidentally pressed the space bar. Shut up, Dan machine. I'll decide when to type. Writer's block. All right, so now that I read those old pieces, I'll get to more recent times. From 2020, long ago along the Hudson, and Mike has heard this one before. It wasn't exactly eating, but the riverfront was my garden. I am Eve, after all. A long time ago, I was rocking to iron butterflies in the Gata La Vida. There were no serpents in my garden, except maybe the Vietnam War. No bad apples, just fun-loving young boomers skipping stones on the river water surface, smoking marijuana or dropping acid to zone out. No fuzz or pigs trying to expel us from our oasis on the riverfront in Peekskill. The Hudson quietly flowed by moored ships, the Ghost Fleet they were called. Their silhouettes stretched from Jones Point to Tompkins Cove, under the spotlight of a brilliant moon, a reminder of a past war. Gathered with friends trying to escape reality, the coming of age, draft in the Vietnam War, we partied to hide our fear. The war, ever present, would take another mother's son to a conflict far, far away, such that we had to check with each other to make note of who the garden lost, realizing you can't always get what you want while skipping stones. And that was a play on words there. Whatever happened to Leo? Whatever happened to Leo? A white man, pale and frail, black yarmulke on his head, a bodega owner who prevailed. He lived amongst us blacks and Latinos, spoke English, Spanish, even Ladino. Sold us groceries, Leo did. Gave out rock candy to the neighborhood kids. A 174th Street Jew, a man of easy speaking, a white light in a dark Bronx, which wasn't easy keeping. Whatever happened to Leo, I surely wish I knew. He was certainly one lone dumpling in a pot of Southern Boulevard stew. In my defense, I was asked, "Why did you marry a white girl, brother?" I pondered this question a bit, having given my marriage much thought, and responded, "I don't know. Maybe because I happened to fall in love. She was, after all, a woman. Maybe because she was attracted to me. I was, after all, a man. Maybe it was because we found in each other what eluded us with everyone else. Maybe because I believed she loved me and she trusted I loved her. But really, brother, a white woman? Yeah, a white woman, brother, which somehow you find fault. I simply married the woman I loved. After all, she is a person of color, and we are both from the rainbow that is mankind." A poem for 2017 from a bygone time. And I'm still trying to figure out what brought this one on, because it's not me, but it is me. From a bygone time. Your scent of femininity filled my nostrils with the fragrance of your divinity, that a taste of your salinity would arouse my masculinity to a point of erectability that I desired your virginity to intersect with mine, such that We declare our liberation from fear to explore our sexuality and confront our mutual curiosity to savor the first taste of love entwined. I'm still trying to figure that one out. Mike, how many more can I do? You're running the show. Protest, die, and cry. I ask myself why another black man is dead. Cops shot 7 times. Cite cops with guns a death threat. Why should I respect the law? Over and over it happens without recourse. Justice is not served up to the victim shot down. Killing blacks is systemic. Killing a black man goes down without penalty over and over. It continues to happen as we protest, cry, and die. From 2017. Another longer piece. America is a contradiction. We hold high the value of our Constitution, Bill of Rights, and democracy, but we don't practice what we preach to the point that every single American is on the same page. The flag and anthem belongs to all of us, not to any separate or special collective. America was born because the rights of a group of people was being violated. In its birth, we violated the rights of the indigenous people that were already here, but we went to war with Britain to assure our rights to freedom that we hold dear today. We fought wars with the Native American, usurped their ownership to lands and territories that they and their ancestors nurtured long before the first Europeans landed here. We went to war with each other over the economy and the right to own slaves, Africans and others brought here to labor in the South and North. Because of this, America has been victimized by its own origins. It is 2017, and now we question the right to protest. How, when, and against what? The flag, the anthem. It is 2017, now we question the righteousness of our symbols of achievement as a country, the Confederate flag and all it represents, Columbus, FDR, why not the bars, why not the stars and stripes? It has its own negative connotations on our history too. America is so full of itself. The American people are all on different roads to where? To taking the country down the road of implosion? Whatever happened to live and let live? Whatever happened to we hold these truths to be self-evident? America is an imperfect nation. It has committed atrocities against itself that you would think would be self-evident. But America has a predisposed personality such that the supposed American dream is undermined and subverted. Going old school, I will revisit something that Thomas Jefferson wrote. He, like America, was a contradiction. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We have military veterans alive and dead who fought to uphold these beliefs. This documented truth against enemies foreign and domestic. As a veteran and African American, I can't physically hold those accountable for our past history, good, bad, or indifferent. I can and have learned from it and live my life treating all the way I want to be treated while living life to its fullest. Yet the climate today in America reminds me that there is still so much more to be done to make the country and its people whole. We are already great, just somewhat dysfunctional. what we do. This is from 2000. We protest, we march. We protest, we march. We protest, we march, while change on both sides of the route shuffles its feet on the concrete sidewalks of making a difference. That's the way it has been for black folks in America, decade after decade after decade. We protest, we march, after another black soul has been taken out by them and placed in a grave. Change attends the funeral as an oblivious observer. We protest, we march into death's open arms, where we rest from marching and no longer have to wait for change. America's graveyards are filled with black men, women, and children, hung, shot, burned alive while pursuing the American dream, apparently designated for them only. We protest, we march, even while change turns its back on us, for we believe we shall overcome them. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Cornflakes and sugar water. Oh, dropped back to 1998. When I was a young boy, breakfast would consist of cornflakes and sugar water, for milk was scarce as money. Mother would get her tired self up from her squeaky, headboardless bed, wearing a faded pink nightgown stretched taut about her hefty body. She'd throw on a threadbare robe, make her way to the kitchen stove, light the oven, leaving the door open to lessen the chill in the roach-shared flat. I hated getting up in the mornings, afraid I would step on a scurrying roach, be nauseated by its crackling death, and green mucus under my feet. Mother would stand over me with her large breasts and partially covered by her undersized robe, shaking me. I would be rudely awakened to her sight. She walked away after a moment, shouting, "Boy, move your butt. Breakfast is on the table." "Do you hear me, boy?" I said, "Move it." So I got up and started my day. I hated getting up in the mornings, maybe because of the lasting images of my mother, maybe because I still expect roaches to be under my feet, maybe because I just don't like rising in the mornings. Yet, I still like cornflakes and sugar water. It was the only thing about my youthful mornings that was sweet. Yeah. All right. Angst from 2004. People with troubled hearts and minds seemingly always try to climb to the tumultuous mountain called normal. With a peak so high that at its best, its crest is an ambiguous point having no point at all, just cloud cover. Normal has false peaks where the view is chaotic and rambling, leaving one no closer to the top, but only near the bottom if one chose to look. What is, isn't. What isn't, is. The struggle to climb to the top of normal, to declare one's conformity, is a crock achieved only by the elite who want to define the norm. So thanks, but no thanks. I'll just live in the valley of the craze and wait for the raging storm.
Jimmy!
That's all she wrote, Michael.
Oh, you wrote it. I got one question now.
What's that?
I don't remember. Did they sink the ghost fleet or did they tow it out?
They towed it all out. They towed the last one out, I want to say, in '74. I believe.
Was it really that long ago?
No, because when we used to come up, from the,
I got Jones Point to wherever, you know. I think it was, it's a story I got married, the fleet was.
Wow, I don't remember.
But I'll check that. I'll check that for you.
No, because when we used to take the train up from the city every time, we always used to see it there. You know, it was always there. You always saw it, and it was. I thought they was like later, like maybe late '80s or '90s when they took it away.
When I actually came out of the Bronx to Peekskill,
Right?
that's the first thing I noticed on the river was that stretched a long way.
Oh yeah.
And
Absolutely.
little by little, you dudes are over ships. So one day they were all gone.
Okay. Jim Eve, Kate Hymes, I want to thank folks for watching. We will be returning, I think it was October 14th or 15th. We're going to have a special presentation on that night. Will Nixon and I have done some collaborative writing over the years. It's a little thing called the King's Garage. So we're going to do it with Robert Kopek on bass and Eric Persons on sax. And hopefully there'll be a little film behind this also. So it's going to be multi-dimensional. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be awesome. But then again, I'm related to P.T. Barnum, so who knows? I want to thank everybody. Again, I want to thank Jim and Kate. Addison, I hope you feel better. Dave, thank you very much. We'll see you next month. Thanks, everybody.